Hi, good morning and welcome to the Joe Wild Morning Poem Show. And for the next 10 days, we're going to do one post per day with Rilke's Duino Elegies, some of the most famous poems of the 20th century. There's little you need to know here in the preliminary sense, except that Rilke's sense of angels, Wallace Stevens' sense of angels, and the Bible sense of angels has no cuteness about it whatsoever. Remember, the famous sales pitch of an angel is fear not, because to see angels is to be awed and terrified, and to live in the solitude that Rilke advocates is to be awed and terrified. Most people love his philosophies on relationship, but what he is the poet of solitude. So the first elegy. Who, if I cried out, would hear me among the angels? Hierarchies. And even if one of them pressed me suddenly against his heart, I would be consumed in that overwhelming existence. For beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror, which we still are just able to endure. And we are so awed because it serenely disdains to annihilate us. Every angel is terrified. And so I hold myself back and swallow the call note of my dark sobbing. Ah, who can we ever turn to in our need? Not angels, not humans. And already the knowing animals are aware that we are not really at home in our interpreted world. Perhaps there remains for us some tree on a hillside which every day we can take into our visions. There remains for us yesterday's street and the loyalty of a habit so much at ease when it stayed with us that it moved in and never left. Oh, and night. There is night, when a wind full of infinite space gnaws at our faces. Whom would it not remain for, that longed after, mildly disillusioning presence, which the solitary heart so painfully meets? Is it any less difficult for lovers? But they keep on using each other to hide their own fate. Don't you know yet? Fling the emptiness out of your arms into the space we breathe. Perhaps the birds will feel the expanded air with more passionate flying. Yes, the springtimes needed you. Often a star was waiting for you to notice it. A wave rolled toward you out of the distant past, or as you walked under an open window, a violin yielded itself to your hearing. All this was mission. But could you accomplish it? Weren't you always distracted by expectation as if every event announced a beloved? Where can you find a place to keep her with all the huge, strange thoughts inside you, going and coming and often staying all night? But when you feel longing, sing of women in love, for their famous passion is still not immortal. Sing of women abandoned and desolate. You envy them, almost, who could love so much more purely than those who are gratified, being again and again the never attainable praising. Remember, the hero lives on. Even his downfall was merely a pretext for achieving his final birth. But nature, spent and exhausted, takes lovers back into herself as if there were not enough strength to create them a second time. Have you imagined Gaspara Stampa intensely enough so that any girl deserted by her beloved might be inspired by that fierce example of soaring, objectless love, and might say to herself, perhaps I can be like her? Shouldn't this most ancient of sufferings finally grow more fruitful for us? Isn't it time that we lovingly freed ourselves from the beloved and quivering endured? As the arrow endures the bowstring's tension, so that gathered in the snap of release it can be more than itself. For there is no place where we can remain. Voices, voices, listen, my heart, as only saints have listened, until the gigantic call lifted them off the ground. Yet they kept on, impossibly, kneeling, and didn't notice at all. So complete was their listening. Not that you could endure God's voice, far from it, but listen to the voice of the wind and the ceaseless message that forms itself out of silence. It is murmuring toward you now from those who died young. Didn't their fate, whenever you stepped into a church in Naples or Rome, quietly come to address you? Or high up some eulogy entrusted you with a mission? As last year on the plaque in Santa Maria Formosa. What they want of me is that I gently remove the appearance of injustice about their death, which at times slightly hinders their souls from proceeding onward. Of course it is strange to inhabit the earth no longer, to give up customs one barely had time to learn, not to see roses and other promising things in terms of a human future, no longer to be what once was in infinitely anxious hands, to leave even one's own first name behind, forgetting it as easily as a child abandons a broken toy. Strange to no longer desire one's desires. Strange to see meanings that clung together once, floated away in every direction. And being dead is hard work, and full of retrieval before one can gradually feel a trace of eternity. Though the living are wrong to believe in the two sharp distinctions which they themselves have created. Angels, they say, don't know whether it is the living they are moving among, or the dead. The eternal torrent whirls all ages along in it, through both realms forever, and their voices are drowned out in its thunderous roar. In the end, those who were carried off early no longer need us. They are weaned from earth's sorrows and joys, as gently as children outgrow the soft breasts of their mothers. But we who do need such great mysteries, we for whom grief is so often the source of our spirit's growth, could we exist without them? In the legend, meaningless, that tells how, in the lament for Linus, the daring first notes of song pierced through the barren numbness. And then, in the startled space, which a youth as lovely as a god had suddenly left forever, the void felt for the first time that harmony which now enraptures and comforts and helps us. The last few months have been a time of great solitude for me. I think of my friend Jennifer Diskin's impending death. She's only 36. This poem raises the stakes of my grief, which I tried to cheapen by vetching and complaining against existence. So in this sense, Rilke can be used, but I prefer not to use him. I prefer just to hear him, and it's a pleasure to read that poem. Thanks.